If people weren't talking in the background, it just wouldn't be. Okay, here's the plan for today. I'm going to give you kind of a recap of where you need to be at this point. And we're recording this for the 4 o'clock people because they will not meet on Thursday. I will be here on Thursday, and I strongly recommend that you come in. I'm not going to say we're having class formally, but I will be here. And so if you want to come in, come in. If you don't want to come in, that's okay, but be doing something on Thursday related to your campaign. Meeting with your client, meeting at Starbucks, something. Because I really want to keep the wheels rolling on this thing because our presentations are coming up very soon. So I want to give you some ideas today. If you want to come in and meet with me Thursday, I'll be here from 2 to 4. And that goes for you 4 o'clock people on Thursday. I'll be here from 2 to 4 on Thursday so that they can come in and talk to me also. So, anyway, here we go. My concern at this point every semester, including this one, is I don't want any mediocre campaigns. And I'm not saying that for me or for the agency per se, I'm saying that for you guys. Because you want to be able to graduate from this experience and from this university and have a campaign book that you go, this kicked ass. This was my best work. You absolutely want to have that. And so this class I view as like the icing on the cake, of your Cal State Fullerton experience and your college experience, because many of you went to other places before you came here. So we really want you to have a really strong campaign that you can be very proud of. That's our primary interest. Secondarily, of course, for the agency, I want us to have really good campaigns because that helps assure our long-term success here. But it's primarily, I'm thinking of for you. And that much better than mediocre campaign comes off when it's small and focused. And I know at this point, your team may be looking at a whole lot of different ideas and planning a whole lot of different things. And so what I want to say to you right now, and to you folks, is keep it small and keep it focused. We're talking 3 or 4 goals at the most, because we're in week 5. Think about that, week 5. And that means there's only about 10 more weeks to go. And in a lot of cases, the campaign hasn't even rolled out yet, and we're a third of the way through the semester. So every time you get together with your team and think about your campaign, I want you to think about this. The idea being, let me do a drawing. I don't know if people on the video can see it or not. But it's like a teeter-totter, and you want to push down on this end of the teeter-totter to have your campaign go whee from that end. And what I want to see you doing is the least amount of effort on this end to make the most amount of effort on that end. So if you're thinking about a variety of different things that you could do in this campaign, I want you to identify the ones that will involve the least amount of effort and the most amount of whee for your campaign. And sometimes you'll get pushback from clients on that, but remember, you're not an employee, you're not an intern, you shouldn't be expected to meet with them every week. You shouldn't necessarily be on speed dial. You are helping them boost their communication. And so I don't want you to feel like they're driving you crazy, because if they are driving you crazy, then we need to dial it back. Now, admittedly, in some campaigns, like the scholarship and awards event, you will be crazy. That's just part of it. But there again, too, try to keep it as manageable and concise and simple as possible so that you eliminate the craziness. But I know, like in your case, Jenny is not calling you every day saying, "I need to talk to you, come together," and that's not happening because she's been through this once and she gets it.
Yeah.
But some of these clients, they go, "I need to talk to you," and if that's happening, we need to find a way to dial it back. So small and focused is the watchword here. 3 at the most 4 goals. Keep it simple. We printed out and passed around these. I was going to show it on the TV and it doesn't show it. Campaign proposal structure. This is from Titanium. This is the structure you should follow for your proposal. Now, admittedly, every campaign is different, so you're going to vary a little bit, but generally speaking, try to stick to this format where you've got the first chapter where you're talking about what's going on here. Who's the client? Did we meet with them? What happened? That kind of thing. Chapter 2, who are we targeting this campaign toward and how do we know? Chapter 3, what's the big picture in terms of strategy, tactics, tools, goals, where do we want this campaign to go and how are we going to get there? Chapter 4, resources and calendar, also known as a timeline. What's the time period for this to happen? That's another reminder for you, oh my God, there's only 10 weeks left. And there'll be even less by the time you get around to your proposal, which is coming up on the 3rd. So, time is rushing by. Chapter 5, outcomes. At this point, what do you think is going to happen as a result of this campaign? You may not have a budget to work with, that's okay. Just because you don't have any money doesn't mean you won't have outcomes. And then 6, measurement, assessment, and evaluation of success. You really don't know at this point what success is, but kind of guess where you think this is going to
I
turn
have a
out.
question about that. What you just said about the measurement part. Isn't it true that this may roll over into the summer session that we cannot measure? Only the summer session can.
You can measure your success of what you have done. And we'll talk about this later in the semester in a few weeks from now, but there are 3 ways to look at success. And the first one is planning. How did you plan this? Has your planning been consistent with what we would expect from other professionals? Implementation. How did you roll this thing out? And impact. Impact, what was the kaboom of the thing? In the case, especially of a campaign that we're going to roll over to a future semester, you still had a plan. And you still rolled out some ideas and you did some work this term. You can assess the success of that. And you can also factor into that implementation, how did you lay out a template for a future semester? Your success is partially built on that. So you've still got a lot to work with. And so that's another one of those things where you think of yourself not in the role of student, but in the role of professional. How would a professional document that the client is getting their money's worth? And all of you have done a lot of stuff that document the client's getting their money's worth, even if they're not paying us any money. So, great question. We'll talk more in detail about that in another couple of weeks. Housekeeping, just a few things to remember, or actually be aware of. When you did that consultation, you were supposed to get a signed client services agreement. Eleanor tells me most of the client services agreements have not been turned in. Most of them. That includes you 4 o'clock people. Where are they? Where are those agreements? Now, if you're the agency client, you're cool because we're your client, so you're okay. But anybody working with an outside client, like the event people, you got to have Jenny sign off.
Oh, we do. Not told us we didn't.
Well, I'm going to disagree with Evan on that. Have Jenny sign off on it.
Okay.
Because Jenny needs to see what's going on too, even though she knows. So, and we need to have that on file so that, let's say Jenny goes berserk in 3 weeks and starts calling you every other day, just like I said she wasn't doing, and saying, I need you to come to my house, hurry, hurry, hurry.
Yeah.
That's where we can take the client services agreement and go, Jenny, you signed this.
Okay.
And you said you weren't going to do that. So, yeah, so get those in. Get them to Eleanor. Make sure we have a signed copy here and the client has a signed copy. You will also need to scan that and have a copy of that submitted with your final book. So we've got to have the client services agreement on file ASAP. Those of you who need to register with CICE, and this is primarily 4 o'clock people, if you're working for an off-campus client, you got to get the client registered with CICE and you got to get registered with CICE, Center for Internships and Community Engagement. Young Americans, I think you're the only one in this group that has to register with CICE.
Yeah, and they did.
They did? Okay.
Did, and then we tried to go on there, and they're still not popping up in the system.
Okay, so then what you should do is call the CI's office and say, we need to get registered, what information do you need from us, and just send it to them, and they'll do it. Because we've had problems in the past where students couldn't get in, and the CI's people said, just send it to us, and we'll do it. So they'll take care of it for you. But 4 o'clock people, a whole bunch of you need to register with CIs if you haven't done that already, and you need to get your clients registered also. Google Drive, make sure you're keeping a copy of everything to Google Drive. Google Drive is your CYA backup, and so, for example, your proposal, when you have your written proposal, upload it to Google Drive so that there's a copy there and I can take a look at it. Anything else that you need to save it to Google Drive. When you get email in the Gmail box and you're done with it, archive it or delete it. Because right now there's about 55,000 things in there, or there was last time I looked. So next time you're in the Gmail box, if there's stuff that was yours, you don't need it anymore, get rid of it. I will send stuff, I will forward it out of my email to Gmail when we get like ad age and other things that need to come to the agency. I just forward them on. And so, you know, if you're in there and see stuff that needs to be put in the folder, just go ahead and do that. And we'll keep that kind of cleaned up. Don't forget we got mailboxes over here. If there's anything that I need to leave for you, I will. The written feedback that you get on paper to your proposal will go over there. So if there's something that I end up writing on paper or Professor Evans writes on paper, it'll go over there. And remember, we've got the whiteboard over here. I see we have a lot of campaigns where it's not really clear what's happening, several of them at the 4 o'clock. So when you've got things going on, try to make an update on there so that Evan and I can come in and go, okay, we see what's up. And that takes care of the housekeeping stuff. Again, on your campaign, simple. 3 goals. Try to leverage it as much as you can. Minimal push, maximum bounce. With the idea, like we've said from the beginning, we're just trying to move the needle here a little bit. We're not trying to do everything for this client. We're trying to do what they can't do, because after all, they contacted us. We're trying to do what they can't do to push them ahead a little bit. In only a couple of cases are we doing all kinds of stuff, like the scholarship and awards event. We can't just move the needle for them, because if we just move the needle a little bit, the event won't come off. So, you know, on that one, we got to move the needle all the way to the end. But for the rest of them, you know, we're just trying to make things a little bit better than what they are. 3 things to think about as you're heading into this and as you're putting together your proposal. One is make sure it's theory grounded. What theory of communication explains how your client looks at communication? What that theory of communication that you select, it relates to how the client views communication. It relates to their values. I think it's an important thing to have in the proposal and certainly in your final book. You also want to talk about the organizational frame. How is this client organized? How does this client make decisions? Because in many cases, when campaigns don't turn out as successfully as they ought to, at the end of the semester, the fault is not necessarily yours, the fault is the client's. I've heard these kinds of things a million times in this class. Check me on this, Evano. Have we heard these things? The students will say, we had all these great social media posts and the client wouldn't give us the password. We had all these great ideas and we emailed them to the client. We never heard back. The client went on vacation and nobody told us. You know, these kinds of things. Well, those are organizational failures on the client's part. That means the client is not communicating with you. So that links back to the idea of an organizational frame. If something is not, you know, if the gears are not meshing with the client, you need to be able to document that in your final campaign book. And in the recommendation section at the end, you find a way to say, you know, in the future, you'll have better communications for your organization if these kinds of things that we experienced don't happen. You know, you want to be polite about it, and you don't want to call out the client. You don't want to say, you're a bunch of stupid people. You know, why are you doing that? You don't want to do that. But you want to say in a positive way, look, these are things that we saw happening, and they impeded our success. If they had not happened, we would have done things better. And so that's what links back to that organizational frame idea. The more you understand the organization, the more authoritative you can be at the end when you point out those things that went wrong. And every semester they happen. Just from last semester, we had the client who shall not be named. We will never name in this room again because the client was an idiot. And he seemed to be smart when I signed him up, but it turned out he was an idiot.
Tell us how you really feel.
Yeah, how do I really feel? Yeah. Oh, man. And the team, last semester's team, they did an amazing job. They really didn't have hardly anything to show because the client wouldn't let them do anything. But the hoops that they jumped through and the effort they made on behalf of this client, and their final presentation was amazing. It was thoroughly professional in every sense of the word because they documented how they tried to get the needle to move and this client wouldn't make it happen. And so it was really good. So you can produce a great final book with a client that is totally an idiot because it boils down to those other measures of success. How well did we plan? How well did we communicate amongst ourselves? How well did we try to roll this thing out? And okay, we didn't have a lot of impact, but look at these other things that we did. And so for us, even though we say, push on the end of the teeter-totter and try to make something fly, even if it doesn't fly really high, that's still okay because we want to look at how well you worked as a team and how you communicated amongst each other and how you had a plan. And that plan wasn't just based on, it seems like the right thing to do. That plan was based on, here's the sources we looked at, here's the other campaigns we looked at, this is the kind of stuff we did, we're modeling our ideas off of that, this is how we went where we wanted to go, or we attempted to go where we wanted to go. And that's where the research component of this comes in. You can't just wing it. I mean, look at other campaigns, look at other articles, make use of advertising age and this kind of thing. By the way, this was a cool article in the paper the other day. This was one of our clients from last year. That's really cool. Anyway, I was walking past the newsstand and went, wow, that's Kenton. So anyway, base your campaign on how you know what you know. Now in some cases, it'll be especially easy, like with the scholarship and awards event. All you got to do is look at what happened last year and identify, okay, how can we make it better from what they did last year? Great. Which is not to say that there aren't sources out there you could potentially go to. How do other departments do their awards program? Is somebody else doing something we ought to copy? That kind of thing. But for the rest of you, just try to identify, what is the appropriate professional practice right now, and try to model that. And if, for example, like one client is trying to get you to have a Facebook page when nobody would follow the Facebook page, that's where you have to, bless you, that's where you have to use your authority and say, and it's hard. You have to say, I hear you. You want to have this Facebook page, but what's in it for people who follow you? Insert crickets chirping. Nothing. You don't have anything to give. So, given that Swanson and Evano are telling us 3 at most 4 goals, why don't we make one of those goals something else that we can really get a bounce out of and take this Facebook idea and put it over here on the side. We're not going to totally dismiss it, but we're just going to kind of put it over here because after all, time's ticking and we've only got 10 weeks and we need to go. And that, I know that's hard to do. It's hard to step out of the role of student into the role of professional, but essentially that's what you are. You are right now. You are working in an agency. You are a professional. And you know more than the clients do because if you didn't, they wouldn't have called us. And so, kind of steel yourself up for that role. And if you got to tell the client no, tell the client no. Or tell the client, let's put this off for later. And if all else fails, go to last semester's videos, and you can look for the video on the client who shall not be named and watch that presentation, bless you, because that presentation kicked ass. It was really good, where they talked about how they had to educate the client. Anyway, so your proposal, your written proposal, follow this guideline. Simple but detailed. And I know you're going, simple but detailed, what does that mean? It's like military intelligence. It's one of those jumbo shrimp, you know. What does that mean? It means no fluff. Get right to the point. Tell us where this is going and why. And follow those steps in there. Make it as simple as you can make it so that we can follow it. And know that you will be subject to revision, but that's okay. That's how this works. This is your first shot out of the box to tell us what you want to do. At the same time, it's very likely you're already rolling out some stuff for this campaign because you can't wait until you get feedback from us before you start laying these things in place. I mean, you just won't have the time to do that. So while you're waiting for feedback from me and from Professor Evano, and the feedback will be quick, you still have to start rolling stuff out for the client. Your in-person presentation on the 3rd of March, we're going to do everybody on that same day. The in-person presentation should run about 10 minutes. Your team's going to be up here. It helps to have some kind of a visual. The 4 o'clock people are going, what's that big blinding square of light? That's actually a visual. It helps to have something like that. So it's funny, when we do the final presentations and the camera is over there, we can see this real good, but not today. So you want to have some kind of visual, but show us a story. Don't tell us a story. Sometimes teams get up here for the presentation and they go, and it's full of text, and Evano is, the veins on the side of his head start to pop out because he's got that rule, whatever that rule is. And it's just too much. So try to show us a story up here on the TV and tell us a story. Tell us a compelling story of your client. And that's kind of a theme that you should go back to again and again with your brainstorming. What's the compelling story of this client? Even if the compelling story is we got to do research and we got to answer some serious questions, that's okay. That's the compelling story. Cut to the chase, get right to that, and try to not worry about all the other stuff floating around in the atmosphere that you could do. What are the 3 or 4 goals that help tell a compelling story of this client? And I know with social media in particular, it's really easy to get distracted because you think, wow, there's Facebook and there's Snapchat and there's Instagram and there's Pinterest and there's all of these things, but if you try to do all of those, you've lost the compelling story. Now you've got all this stuff floating around and it's really hard to get focused on that. So always take your conversation in your group, on your team, back to that compelling story. What is it? What do we need to say for this client? And if we need to roll the client over to a future semester, we can sure do that. But what can we do right now in the remaining 10 weeks to tell a compelling story? And every one of these stories is going to be different. Like the agency team, you're going to have one kind of compelling story. And the awards event, you're going to have another one. Your story is going to be all at one time that night. Bam. And what you want for your story is people to walk out of that event and go, damn, that was great. That was wonderful. And they hug their kid and they take their pictures and, woohoo. And that's the compelling story that you want. And with IT, maybe your compelling story is research-based. You need to answer some questions. Not a lot, because you don't have time to answer a lot, but a few that will catapult this into the next semester. So for all of these, think about that compelling story. What is it? And focus on that. And try to stay away from all the other stuff floating around. So getting down to the end here, remember that you are in the place now where you are transitioning from student to professional. And the way I like to hear people talk about our agency is I want to hear clients and former clients talk about practical advantage communications, the student-run agency. Emphasis on the agency. I don't want people to say, oh, we had those students come out and do a little project, you know, the students from the student agency, because that diminishes you guys, you know. You are professionals, you're stepping into that role. So I want to take the word student and shrink it down and have the word agency be big, because that's what you are at this point. You know more than the client knows. That's why they've called us. So that's another reason to keep this really short and simple and focused, because you don't want to overextend yourself. If you overextend with too many things, you end up with a mediocre campaign, and we don't want to go there. Couple things I want to show you, for those of you who can see. Keep in mind a couple of things from Titanium. All client proposal presentations will be on the 3rd. So at the time that you present, Evan O will be here in the room, I will not. So you'll need to have your written proposal for him to look at while you're presenting. You will need to put a copy of that proposal in Google Drive for me to look at. Your client should have a copy of that beforehand. You can do it electronically or whatever to get it to the client, with the idea to the client that this is kind of a working proposal. This is where we're starting from. You want to get some feedback from the client. You're going to get feedback from Evan and from me. But you know, the proposal is really a working document. This is where we're going. And based on the feedback you get from the client and from Evan and from me, that's how the last half of the semester will roll out for you. Be ready for revisions, because you will need to have them, I guarantee you. Most revisions, in most cases, we ask you to scale down. We think you're doing too much. So don't go into this like all hands shaky, you know, they're going to make me do this thing a whole lot bigger than, no. 95% of the time is we want you to do less, not more. But we'll get to that. Keep in mind that team member evaluations are coming up. There's a link on Titanium. If you scroll down from the top, it will take you to a form. You won't be able to open it yet, but it's there. And beginning March the 8th and for a week, that form will be open. And you will go in there and respond to questions that we ask you about how things are going. And let me show you what those questions are, just for the fun of it. So we ask questions in 5 areas. We ask, you're going to rate each member of your team on preparation. How prepared are they and ready to work? On dependability, do they do what's promised when it's promised? On quality, the contributions of this member of my team are valuable. On attitude, this member of my team has a positive, optimistic outlook. To hell with that. And then morale. Oh, I knew he was going to get to the morale question. The morale question, you know, is this person, you know, are they happy to be here? Or do they come to every meeting and, you know, by the time the meeting is done, you feel like you've been dragged down? So make sure you get in there and rate the members of your team. Do it between the 8th and the 15th. Make sure you do it, because if you don't do it, your score is 0, regardless of how everybody else ranked you. So that feedback is really important. So make sure you don't forget to do that. When all the data comes in, the data goes to Farnoosh and Mary Grace, and they will crunch the numbers. And then they will come back to us with a spreadsheet, and we will give your numbers to you that show how you're doing. Most of the time, most students are doing just fine. Occasionally, there are problems. And so if there are problems, then that's a signal to you to get together with your team and talk about it and have that meeting in the minds. What can we do to communicate better? Because you will do an identical survey to this at the end of the semester. And these two will contribute to your final grade. So just be aware that that's coming along. So, to wrap this all up, I'm going to be here Thursday from 2 until 4. 2? 4? And I welcome you to come in Thursday and talk to me about what you got going on. Those of us who are here in person will have a chance to talk before I leave today. I really want you to feel like this is moving forward and you're feeling really good about this. And you feel that you've got a plan that's small and manageable, and you can do this in the weeks that remain after the presentation. Because after the presentation, we're looking at probably 9, maybe 8 weeks realistically, because the last week of the semester, the last week or 10 days of the semester, you got to spend putting your book together. And in fact, I usually have students tell clients in the spring semester, by May 1, done. May 1, done. No more. No more information gathering, no more meeting with the client, no more making Facebook posts, none of that, because your time at that point has got to be focused on wrapping up the campaign, assessing your success, writing the book, getting ready for the presentation, all that kind of thing. And some clients will try to drag that out. They'll try to get you to work right up till the very end. We've even had clients ask students to, you know, could you extend the work into the summer? No, not with this team, you know. So kind of keep that in mind. That's something also on your timeline that you do for the proposal. Look at that drop dead date of May 1st and work back so that you don't get yourself pushed beyond that.
I have a question about
Yes.
this book.
Uh-huh.
Is it one book that we all contribute to, or do we each have a book?
One book for each team. One book for each team.
Okay.
Now, I recommend that each one of you on the team, you make a copy for yourself because you're going to want to show this, but one book for each team that lays out the whole campaign from beginning to end. And at the end of the book, it says, where do we go from here? And at the end of the semester, for those clients like yours that we would potentially roll over into the next semester, I'm going to look to you for your guidance. Do we do that or not? Because there have been times in the past where student teams have said, oh man, this client was great, we did good work, the client was wonderful, they were cooperative, yes, 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 roll them into next semester, it'd be wonderful to have another team work with them. The client really wants that. And then there have been other times when the team has said, we're really glad we're done with this, and we don't think this client should ever be represented on Earth again. And, you know, and that's okay, because we sure don't want to roll over a client into a future semester if they're going to be a problem. But I look to you for your guidance on that. And then last semester, we had a client that we had dealt with once before, so they were on their second semester, and at that point I said, the client's going to have to give us $500 if we're going to roll them over again. And the client said no, so that client is not here. So that's important too. And those of you who do have supporting clients, that's going to factor into this too. If we deliver the client an invoice for $500 and we don't get $500, the client doesn't come back, because that was a commitment that we made with all these people at the beginning of the semester. So, but anyway, I will look to you for your guidance on that. Okay, I think we can say goodbye to the 4 o'clock people.
Bye.
Bye!